George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
The Holy Land is burning. Jazin, Beirut, Nazareth, Haifa, and eyeless and limbless and increasingly dead in Gaza. The much discussed wider Middle East war begins this evening. The Iranian response to the mass killing and terrorism being visited upon their co-religionists in Lebanon means that Iran will have to speak, and loudly, and, as they put it, in unprecedented ways. In the United States, Dr., if you will, Jill Biden is running the country. Joe Biden held the first American cabinet meeting in almost 1 year and handed it over to his unelected wife to chair. That's how gaga he is. And Kamala tumbles from tragedy to farce, light operatic madness with Oprah Winfrey. If you haven't seen the clip, you simply have to watch it. And in Britain, Pantygate continues to ruffle, and the contortions, the twisting of the explanations of why senior Labour politicians have been accepting freebies and underhand funding like nothing that Britain has ever seen before, and they've only been in power for 60 days. Well, it's all coming up here on the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
The Deputy Prime Minister of Britain, a woman by the name of Angela Rayner, who has been a Member of Parliament for 10 whole years, explained on British television that she was accepting thousands of pounds in free clothes from private individuals to whom she promised nothing and has given nothing. They were just giving it to her out of, I suppose, the goodness of their hearts. Maybe they took pity on how badly she habitually is dressed. She says she had to take these outfits because she is of working class background. Well, let me tell you, no person of working class background that I have ever known has received thousands of pounds worth of clothes from perfect strangers who have no ulterior motive and for whom one has done nothing. It is a kind of madness that has overtaken the British political class. All day, all weekend, we have had Labour leaders after Labour leaders explaining just why, when their salaries are in the high six-figure bracket, have to get everything free from private individuals. Starting at the top, the fish always rots from the head after all. It turns out that the Prime Minister has been receiving not just scores of thousands of pounds for his own clothing, even his spectacles, but for his wife's clothing. She did nothing in return either, I suppose. She was receiving underwear from private benefactors, billionaires, but of course, none of them wanted anything in return. That's why I dubbed it Pantygate. Well, they're still getting their panties in a twist, and it's all down to Taylor Swift. It turns out they were all at the Taylor Swift concerts. Some of them multiple times at the Taylor Swift concerts in Britain. And none of them paid a damn penny. None of them queued for a minute for a ticket. None of them waited hanging on the phone line so that they could pay like normal people. All of them got them absolutely free, and they're now being dragged like prisoners to confess their sins and promise that they'll stop doing it. No explanations to why they did it, but promising that they'll stop doing it. And the excuses that they're coming up with are ever more lurid. A woman called Phillipson, who's the Education Secretary, God save us, and who's the leader of the Labour Friends of Israel, she couldn't refuse the free Taylor Swift tickets because one of her children really wanted to go. Way to go, Ms. Phillipson, blaming your child for your own rapacious, rampant greed. You went there free, and many of your colleagues went there free, and some of them went multiple times free because you are greedy, grasping, corrupt individuals. And the idea that the people who are giving you these free clothes, free spectacles, free underwear, free concert tickets want nothing in return, and that you will give them nothing in return is, of course, utterly fanciful. Now, there are countries where this kind of thing happens, but not here, not in Britain. We won't accept it. We won't tolerate it. You're a bunch of crooks. It's not only that you stand for nothing. It's not only that you're committing crimes abroad, crimes at home, against our pensioners, against our poorest children. You're corrupt personally, fattening your income with undeclared, illegally undeclared largesse from private individuals. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch, as somebody famously said. There ain't no such thing as top-of-the-range free underwear. There ain't no such thing as free suits, free spectacles, and there ain't no such thing as free tickets to a Taylor Swift concert or three. The truth is, the British people have fallen madly out of love with Keir Starmer and his Labour government. They didn't love them very much to begin with. Only 19% of the British people actually voted for them. Don't be fooled by the bloated parliamentary majority. That's down to the freakonomics of the British electoral system. They were never in love with them. But no Prime Minister in the entire history, and I have known, I was born when Winston Churchill was the Prime Minister, for God's sake. There has never been a Prime Minister who became so hated so quickly as Keir Starmer. His government may survive based on the parliamentary arithmetic, but I predict to you that Keir Starmer will not survive. He always looked constipated. He always looked on the edge of tumbling over. He always looked so wooden the birds were trying to nest in him. But now he looks like a hunted man. And he is hunted. The mass media in Britain, having done so much to put him in office 60 days ago, are now all over him like a rash. And they ain't going to stop until they have removed him. Mind you, the guy who will be along in a minute, because it won't be Angela Rayner, whoever's dressing her, by the way, for thousands of pounds, is getting a very bad deal for their money. She ain't no clothes horse. She ain't no walking advertisement for anybody's label. Nobody would want Angela Rayner to declare that she was dressed by them. She won't be the next Prime Minister. It's a little runt called Wes Streeting, who incidentally would have been knocked out of Parliament by an outstanding independent called Liane Mohammed, a young Palestinian woman who came within 500 votes, 300 votes of getting this runt out, this mini-me Peter Mandelson, this mini-me Tony Blair. 300 votes he won by. Do you know how or why? Because the so-called Green Party insisted on standing against an outstanding independent like Liane Mohammed. They got 3,000 votes. The runt won by 300 votes. So if he becomes the Prime Minister, God help the health service, God help you, and blame the Greens, because otherwise he wouldn't even have been in the Parliament. I hate these Greens, just for the avoidance of doubt. People say that the Greens are somehow a progressive force. My God, the Greens in Germany are up to their neck in Palestinian blood, up to their neck in Ukrainian blood. The Greens in Australia, in Ireland, in Germany are war criminals. And people say that they're some kind of progressive option. I'll tell you, greenery, wokery and quackery is not the answer to Britain's fundamental problems. In fact, greenery equals penury, poverty, unemployment, net zero, no chance. Get lost. Let me move on because I've already taken up too much time on British political affairs and there's so much else to discuss. Jill Biden chaired the American cabinet this week. Other than lying beside Joe Biden in bed at night, if she still does, I don't know what qualification she has to chair the American cabinet. Certainly against the Constitution, certainly against all rules of common sense. But Joe Biden is so gaga that he opened his first cabinet in 11 months and promptly handed it over to Jill Biden to chair it. Nobody's even pretending any longer that that sunbather there on that sun lounger is running the United States. Nobody is even pretending anymore that in this great swirl of international events where World War III could break out any minute on any front, in the South China Sea, in the Persian Gulf, in the Red Sea, in the Mediterranean Sea, in the Levant, World War III could break out. And America has a president who's not even all there and has handed over his key decision-making and procedural responsibilities to his wife. Well, he could hardly hand them to Kamala Harris, could he? Because anybody who saw Kamala Harris on the Oprah Winfrey show already knows this woman is barking mad. This woman's not fit to be the junior human resource manager of a small college in California. This woman can only speak with an auto cue. She had an auto cue on Oprah Winfrey's show. So all this, hold it, clutching her pearls, voice breaking, talking about who we are, who we can be, unburdened by what we have been. All these platitudinous lunacies are actually written on an auto cue. You couldn't make it up. Even Oprah Winfrey, who couldn't have been more up her backside if it was possible, was willing her to stop speaking. You're making a fool of yourself, Kamala, and you're making a fool of me having to pretend that I am impressed by this. This woman is mad, I tell you. And so we'll swap, if they win, a geriatric Alzheimer's patient in Joe Biden for one flew over the cuckoo's nest. And I don't even mean Nurse Ratched. You wouldn't give her a bedpan to empty. You wouldn't give her a bed to make. You wouldn't give her a floor to sweep. But you're going to give her the nuclear codes? You're going to put her in charge of the world's most powerful military? You're going to put her in charge of the world's second biggest economy? Well, you're dafter than she is if you do. But the big events are unfolding for the moment. Attention could switch back in a minute to the Eastern Front, to the Ukraine, to the River Dnieper, to the great Russian city of Odessa, to the Black Sea coast. At any minute, an exchange of weapons could destroy a nuclear plant, sending it up into the air in a giant mushroom, and its radioactivity headed your way. That could happen any minute. But what is happening right this minute is an all-out war in the Holy Land. I know these places well. Jezin, which may well have been bombed with a nuclear device. If not a nuclear device, then definitely vacuum bombs. Definitely a Moab, the mother of all bombs that Trump fired at the people of Afghanistan, just to put them even further back into the Stone Age, just before Joe Biden scuttled out of the country and left them hundreds of billions of dollars worth of top American military materiel and weaponry. That kind of bomb. Look at it. It's a mushroom cloud. And where did they drop it? On Jezin. What's in Jezin? The holy Christian places where Jesus walked. I've been there. I've been in the cave where the Last Supper was held. These are amongst the holiest places in Christendom that are now on fire. Nazareth is on fire. Nazareth! From where Jesus came, from which Mary and Joseph were forced to head for Jerusalem, ending up in Bethlehem, giving birth in a stable. Bethlehem is on fire, where Jesus was born. There are bombs exploding by the minute. In 40 minutes, Israel landed 50 air attacks on Lebanon. Hundreds are being killed. And that's just with the bombs. I saw today that Israel is denying any involvement in the pager terrorist attack. A pager terrorist attack that maimed thousands of people, murdered dozens of people, blew people's eyes out, hands off, blew their legs off. Having spent the week basking in the Mossad's cleverness, Israel insists today that it had no involvement in the pager attack. Coming up next, the Pope is not a Catholic and bears deny defecating in the woods. For whom was this denial intended? Who in the world will believe that Israel was not involved in this pager attack? Even the idiot savants of the Western media won't dare to print something as insultingly, obviously false as that. But we've moved on from the pager attack, which was undoubtedly a major, perhaps the major act of terrorism since 9/11. Think about it. Thousands of victims in an instant, wherever they were, whoever they were. Many of the pagers were sold to doctors and nurses in Lebanon's hospitals. They got their hands blown off. They got their eyes blown out. These victims are wiped away from the public consciousness in the West by the simple application of the H word. Any Arab, if you call them an H, you can justify, and they justify, murdering them whatever age they are, even if they're small children, even if they're babies, even if they're women, even if they're doctors, even if they're nurses, teachers, shopping assistants, checkout operators, petrol station, pump attendants. Call them H. Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah. According to Piers Morgan, it was a Hezbollah pager attack, even though we have seen the pictures of hundreds of victims who by definition cannot be Hezbollah. Not least because they're 3 years old. Not least because they are small children. Anyway, it's hit the fan. As some of you were mocking me the other week for telling you that this was all going to happen, it's already now happening. Israel is pulverizing Lebanon. Lebanon is pulverizing Israel, setting fire everywhere in both countries, and Iran is about to speak. Question is, what does the West do then? You'll learn a lot over the next 1 hour and 40 minutes because this is the global university of the airwaves. This is the mother of all talk shows.
Mr. President, we got a report of a 50-foot woman marauding through Washington, sir.
Thank you, Captain. But I'm looking for a shorter woman, one who likes to take long strolls in the park and yell at minorities.
She's not looking for a date. She's terrorizing the city.
Is there a difference? A little levity. Call in the military.
We are the military, sir.
Boy, we got here fast. We better do something, right?
Shall I scramble the jets, Mr. President?
No thanks. I'll just take a muffin and some coffee.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Our regular poll is going great guns, if you'll forgive the pun. 35,911 people have voted so far. In the question, is the Israeli pager attack an act of terror? You can vote yes, or you can vote no. You can vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, my Twitter handle, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. And it is now 37,589, my goodness. Now, if you want to call the show, here are the numbers. It's completely toll-free in the United States, +1 844 944 3344, and equally free of charge in the United Kingdom and Ireland. 08081 96 55 22, 08081 96 55 22, and the number for the rest of the world, 0044203962625. Get voting, get calling. Our first guest is Nick Cruse, for the first time on the mother of all talk shows, a citizen journalist extraordinaire, co-founder of the revolutionary Blackout Network, and well worth watching. Nick, welcome to the show. Did I summarize the farcical nature of the Democrat campaign appropriately enough in my introduction? I watched the Kamala Harris, Oprah Winfrey farce, and I actually couldn't believe my eyes and my ears. For me, it's the worst yet. How do you see things?
Thank you for having me on, George. And things are quite bleak because we're seeing this merging with the Dick Cheney Republicans, the Reagan Republicans merging with the liberal neocons to form this unapologetically pro-war, pro-fascist party. When you listen to Kamala's speech at the DNC convention, for example, it's probably one of the craziest speeches I ever heard in my life. It was a speech where they declared that we will never pursue peace, that we will have an era of never-ending war. We had Kamala Harris that was criticizing Trump for being too weak on Iran, that was promising conflict with China, and they was fully supportive, and they continue to be supportive of the Israeli genocide in Gaza. Something else that Kamala Harris has done in her career was team up with far-right Republicans like Marco Rubio to condemn the UN resolution against Israeli terrorism in the West Bank. And as Israel is engaging in mass terrorism attacks in the West Bank, you have Kamala Harris still claiming that Israel will have her non-conditional support. So we have an administration that is promising never-ending war. We have a vice president that is criminalizing anyone who criticizes the war. like Chairman O'Malley of Uhuru. They going after dissidents for advocating for peace, like African Streams, Hampton Institute, Revolutionary Blackout. We face channel strikes, nonsense strikes. So we're seeing the liberal class cheer on, cracking down on dissent while advocating for endless violence. But at least they have a rainbow flag in their profile picture, George, as they are cheering for World War III.
Exactly. We've had this before. You're too young to know, but I grew up when the Democrats were in power in the United States and murdering millions of people in Indochina. So I know about the Democrats. I know about the liberals in America. But what we've never had before is what I call the imbecilic character of the political leadership. If you look at Joe Biden, if you look at Kamala Harris, and if you look at Donald Trump, you become afraid that such people could very soon wield such power.
These are the same people who've been trying to convince the American people and the people of Europe that a small country known as Ukraine was going to defeat Russia, and they were going to put sanctions on Russia that would lead to the destruction of the Russian economy. Now, Russia's stronger than ever. Russia and China are closer than ever. It led to the rise of BRICS. Now we have countries seeking de-dollarization. And this is the moves of the neoliberal agenda. They made these moves, they made these declarations that was proven undeniably false. And it goes to your point, George Galloway, there's an incompetence in the ruling class as well, their bloodthirstiness. You will never have people like Bernie Sanders, Matt Duss, Marianne Williamson, all the NATO leftists. There's all these fake leftists who only care about gender ideology in this country. That's what they think leftism is, who cheer for war against Russia. The only thing that happened as a result of that is us being closer to World War III than ever. Germany and the UK economy is in shambles while Russia's stronger than ever. And they will get upset and they will go after and criminalize people who advocate for peace with Russia. Like, once again, Chairman O'Malley. And this has led the United States and the global working class not to be stronger. But this is the position of the Democratic Party. We will advocate for war, and anyone who advocates for peace is the enemy. They want to kill anyone. They want to lock up anyone who advocates for peace for Russia, who advocates for peace for China. There was a story how the Navy is planning for war with China in 2027. China's not our enemy. But if you listen to Kamala Harris, it's nonstop anti-China propaganda. They want to convince us because the Congress in the United States has a 13% approval rating, because Americans can't exist without popping antidepressant pills because our society is sick, they have to convince us that the Chinese is our enemy, that Assad in Syria is our enemy, that Nicolas Maduro is our enemy, and we engage in intense fascism and violent imperialism, not only just to create this culture of never-ending war, but to expound and expand on the military-industrial complex, because they've been raking in big ever since the start of the Ukraine conflict. You have Palantir, who have two CEOs who support both of the candidates, who made record profits selling AI targeting technology to Israel. So I want to make sure I add that, because that's very important to remember. It's all about boosting the profits of the military-industrial complex and leading us to ruin.
Yeah, although there won't be any profits for anybody if the balloon goes up and we end up in World War III. And I don't know what kind of life they think they'll have when they crawl out of their underground bunkers into the nuclear winter where everybody else has been killed. It is very difficult to understand the mentality of it. But let's go granular for a minute, Nick. This disaster now overwhelming Lebanon is final. It's terminal for the Democrats in Michigan, for example, where a huge part of the Democrat vote bank are Arabs, many of them Lebanese. I always joke, I spoke twice in Michigan. It's the only place I knew ever where the cops were supporters of Hezbollah. And Hassan Nasrallah had pictures of them in their cop cars. This is Arab Central. Dearborn, Michigan. The idea that Kamala Harris, who's presiding over a situation where Israel is destroying Lebanon, the idea that Arabs and Muslims in America are going to vote for Kamala Harris in the likes of Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and elsewhere is surely now a dead duck.
I have to admit that I am quite jealous of my Muslim brothers and sisters because this is what I've been advocating for my Black community to have a mass exodus of the Democratic Party. Because trust me, George, what we are seeing is real. I don't even think it's being properly counted in the polls. I was in Chicago and I was on the ground covering the anti-genocide protests, and the generation has been mobilized very similar to the Vietnam War, to the Iraq War. Many people who didn't cover this issue, I've been covering this issue since day one. Ever since I started as a citizen journalist a few years ago, Israel-Palestine was always on my mind because I could tell that a genocidal action like coming from Israel will happen. But I seen a mass awareness, the likes that we never seen before. We had Biden appointees who resigned in mass. There was Lily Greenberg Hall, a Jewish appointee who explained how the Biden administration has a culture of racism against the Palestinian people. There was another resignee that worked for USAID who made a report that detailed Israeli war crimes, and the Biden administration fired him. You had Aaron Bushnell, who self-immolated in an act of protest against the genocidal regime because the Biden administration ordered the Air Force to help Israel with targeting, something that the media never talks about. So Aaron Bushnell's death is directly on the hands of the Biden administration. Do you guys think the Muslim American population don't know this? You guys think the peace-loving movement do not understand this? So there must be a reckoning. We cannot allow the establishment to devalue the lives of Palestinians by rewarding the Democratic Party with another administration. It's very important to keep the pendulum swinging and never allowing any wing of the establishment to gain too much momentum. We saw what happened when George Bush Jr. had 2 terms, had a lot of momentum. We saw what happened when Barack Obama had 2 terms, had a lot of momentum. Ronald Reagan, we need chaos because the establishment, what they want one smooth administration with a ton of momentum. It would be catastrophic, George, if Kamala won. Like it would be because they would have the mandate to continue their genocidal actions. They would have a mandate to continue endless war with Russia. And don't get twisted. I have no illusions that Trump will be better. I think he will continue the wars as well. But we cannot ever allow the ruling class to have a mandate toward genocide.
No, quite. I mean, if somebody's actually committing genocide, the idea that somebody else who might come in might is self-evidently the lesser of 2 evils, because you don't have to look in the crystal ball to see what Donald Trump will do. You can look at what's actually happening under the Biden-Harris. But here's a tricky one, Nick. Right at the moment when a perfect political storm was gathering for Dr. Jill Stein of the Green Party, when she was headed for an actual victory over the Democrats in at least 1, but maybe 3 states amongst Arab and Muslim Americans. She was miles ahead in the polls. She chose that minute under the pressure of a bantamweight, a guy who couldn't get a gig in Britain, MehdiHassan. Nobody would cross the road to listen to him. She goes on his show and immediately capitulates to his framing of the Ukraine war. Yes, Putin is a war criminal. Of the regime change operation in Syria. Yes, Bashar al-Assad is a war criminal. Why did she do that? She did not need to do that. Why did she?
Yeah, I really wish my sister Jill understood that the establishment will call her a Putin puppet, a Assad puppet, even if she repeats the lies said by the regime. The only tool that we have is truth, George. Even if the truth is inconvenient to the ruling class. So we must tell the truth to the establishment unapologetically about Putin and Assad and how they are forming an axis of resistance against the criminal United States empire who funds terrorist cells that was going after Assad, for example. The problem is there's been this long-standing culture of the left of trying to appease neocons by repeating their talking point, but having the good solution. Because Jill Stein's overall solutions are good when she called for the abolishment of NATO, pulling out of Ukraine war, but it does not benefit us for us to repeat their talking points against Putin. This has been something that the left and the peace movement has failed to do. We need to humanize our enemies. Me personally, I'm a big fan of China and how they lifted people out of poverty. I love how they are helping build infrastructure in Africa and forgiving debts. I love their system of government that allow 80% of millennials to be homeowners, keep the average rent to 500 bucks a month. There's a lot of things to praise, but you don't have to be like me, George. But what you have to do is just advocate for peace, advocate for coexistence, and understand where the other side is coming from, which is what the establishment is terrified of, which is why they banned RT, which is why they are waging a war against journalists, because they don't want the average population to understand the truth. So that's why it's very important for Joe Stein to unapologetically tell the truth about the enemies of the empire, because we can't allow them to get away with the lie that meant to lead to more war.
Exactly. Nick Cruse, you're a star. Hope to see you back here soon. Thanks for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. Is the Israeli pager attack an act of terror? Is the Pope a Catholic? You can vote yes or you can vote no. Some fools are voting no. 12% on X, on Twitter, have voted no. Make sure your voice is heard in that poll on Telegram, on Twitter, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. Now, the poll is standing at 38,564. Let's get that over 40,000 so it is a proper sample of the MOATS audience. Is the Israeli pager attack an act of terror? Quick break now, and then it's your calls all the way to the hour. Stay tuned.
Hello, George. I heard Neil Kinnock commenting on you losing your seat, okay? I was disgusted and amazed at what he said. He was like an ignorant football supporter. He actually punched his fist in the air, saying he was delighted that you were gone, that you were a horrible person. That's the first thing he said. When he was leader of the Labour Party, he was conniving morning, noon and night to kick you out of the party. Now, this is before Tony Blair, and you were in good standing with the Labour Party. Mr. Kinnock, that chap just totally disgusted me. So what I think the British have to do, and the Irish and everybody else, is they need a new conversation and stop drinking Coca-Cola and Pepsi. And I think all those people in British civil society, including Jeremy Corbyn, Diane Abbott, Ken Livingstone, and very many more, have to have a conversation about how to wean the British and everybody else away from these Coca-Cola and Pepsi parties.
Nobody knows who Neil Kinnock is. Those who know who he is know he's the man from the Welsh Valleys that betrayed the miners. Frankly, the hatred of Neil Kinnock I wear not even as a badge of honour, a little tiny pin maybe, because pretty soon no one will have heard of him at all. But the wider subject that you raise is the important one. I don't know, Jeremy says he doesn't want to form a party. That's fine by me. I've got my own party. I'll be staying in it anyway. But what I would like him to do is to announce a new popular front, like the one that has just, I can tell you officially, won the French parliamentary elections.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Anybody know what this means? Usher and Pink both delete all their ex posts in the light of P. Diddy's arrest. My young wife will have to educate me on that later in the show. Usher, Pink, P. Diddy, what are they talking about? Charlie is in Ashfield in England on the US elections. Go ahead, Charlie.
Hello, great to be on here. I've got a quick question for you, George.
Yeah.
Who, because obviously it's not very clear from your social media posts, who would you want to win the election?
Jill Stein.
Who?
Dr. Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate.
Why? Why though?
Because she'll end the war in Ukraine, she'll withdraw the United States from NATO, she will tackle the economic inequalities in the United States, she will stop supporting the murderous regime of Netanyahu. She's the only Jew standing in the race, and she's the only person in the race that supports the Palestinians. So she's got my support, despite her weaknesses.
But can't you say that Donald Trump would do all of that, and he's actually one of the only two candidates which can actually win? Aren't you saying that your endorsement's a waste of time when Donald Trump will actually succeed and complete all those things?
Well, the problem is there's no reason whatsoever to believe that Donald Trump will do all those things. Donald Trump is a slave to Israel. I mean, he is virtually wearing the Israeli flag around his neck. He is even more he's running against Harris on the basis that she will lead to the destruction of Israel, that he is the only real friend that Israel has, that Netanyahu has. So where did you get the idea that Donald Trump will stop the genocide in Israel-Palestine? Where did you get that idea?
Well, my personal opinion is, at the moment in the in the current US situation, that's not the biggest issue. Donald Trump is offering real economic priorities. He's going to fix the economy. He's going to fix a lot of things. And he's one of the only candidates which actually has a chance of winning. And this Dr. Josephine Stein, they can't win. A third party candidate cannot win.
That presupposes I'm in the business of voting for the lesser of two evils. I don't like evil. I'll never vote for evil. And it's not easy for me to discern who the lesser of two evils is. You say that that's not the main issue. Well, it is the main issue. In the rest of the world, it will be the main issue if it leads to World War III. The price of pies in Peoria is as nothing compared to what's about to happen. The stock exchange is about to crash. The world trading routes are about to jam up. The Shatt al-Arab, the Straits of Hormuz, the Suez Canal, the Eastern Mediterranean, the Red Sea are all about to be ablaze. There's about to be World War III. And you're asking me to give my support to Donald Trump? Of course. If Jill Stein, Dr. Jill Stein, is not elected, then I'd rather Trump was elected than Harris, for the reason I just gave to my last guest. You don't have to look in the crystal ball to see what Donald Trump will do. You have to look at what's actually happening right now, that Harris is actually doing right now. Charlie, last word to you.
Right, well, personally, my opinion is I will endorse Donald Trump because he's the only candidate that stands as a chance. He's got a track record.
Does he know yet? Thanks, Charlie, in Ashfield, endorsing Donald Trump, the much coveted Charlie in Ashfield nomination, or much coveted Charlie in Ashfield endorsement has gone to Donald Trump. The podcast says, yes, we're in the top 20 in South Africa. I would have thought we were always in the top 20 in South Africa. I'm actually a bit disappointed to learn that we've only just broken into the top 20 in South Africa. Don't let us slip out of the top 20 in South Africa. But we are in the top 20 in Italy, which is a quite remarkable thing. Gayatri and me have just been traveling in Italy. Maybe we brought us some good luck there. We're in the top 10 in Malaysia again, and in the top 5 in Oman. But wait for it, we're number 1 in the Gambia and number 2 in Benin. We're making enormous strides in Africa in terms of building an audience, not just for the podcast, but for the live show as well. It's got me tantalizingly thinking about a MOATS Africa again. You can download the MOATS podcast by scanning that QR code in the corner of your screen right now. On line 2 is Matt in California on Israel. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, Matt. How you doing?
I'm good.
How you doing,
I'm
George?
good. All good, thanks.
Good. So I'm talking about, you asked about the pager attack is definitely a terrorist attack. How amazing that, listen to the mainstream media talking about, after the attack happened, they talked about sophistication of the Mossad and how tactic they have, and it just blew my mind where they forgot about discussing some terrorist activity by giving compliment to the Mossad and the whole mainstream media. Nobody, everybody talk about Hezbollah pager, but these pagers bloated around innocent civilians, children, women, people minding their own business, going on with their daily basis, and the mainstream media is silent. If that happened,
or even worse, triumphantly gloating over it. Would they have gloated that the 9/11 terrorist attacks on the United States were a brilliant, dazzling, tactical victory for bin Laden or whoever done it? Would they? Would they be more or less gloating that the victims were the enemies of bin Laden or whoever done it? Of course they would not. It is another example of the subhumanization that they have in their hearts and in their minds about Arabs and about Muslims. You put the H in front of them, they're all Hamas, they're all Hezbollah, they're all Houthis. You've got to do that because when a picture emerges of a 4-year-old kid being dragged, broken, bloodied and dead from a burning building, you've got to be able to justify that to yourself. So you call her Hezbollah too. Matt in California, thanks for that call. Some comments. Kamala in Finnish equals horrible in English. She's farcical, actually. Scamala or chump. Voting for the least of two evils, you are still voting for evil. That's the way I see it. If you keep voting for the lesser of two evils, evil always wins. And the axis of evil gets even more evil next time. You have to vote for what's right. And Dr. Jill Stein, of the main 3 candidates, is the least wrong and most right. That's the long and the short of it. David Marston says, remember when Trump took out a full-page ad in the newspapers calling for the return of the death penalty during the Central Park 5 rape allegations. The 5 black boys were innocent. I'll never forget it, David. Ronan McReevy says Miriam Adelson gave Trump a $100 million donation, presumably to wash away the West Bank, figuratively and literally. On the line from Portland in Oregon is another Matt on Lebanon. Matt, for the second Matt in a row, welcome.
Hi. Oh,
Hi.
Yeah. That whole terrorist attack on Tuesday and Wednesday, it turns out apparently Monologue came out and said that they had licensed out their equipment to a company in Hungary who apparently was the one that put the C4 in there and sent them off to Lebanon. And you saw Michael Rapaport put a video going laughing about this, and Mike Cervinovich and others, and I warned them. I said, you know that this could be turned on you. And I said, and on Twitter, I said, I can't wait till Iran destroys Israel. I woke up Friday and they banned me, suspended me indefinitely, saying that I use violent speech. And I said in my appeal, I said nothing I said about F Israel or that these people, this could be turned on you, or that I supported Iran destroying Israel was violent speech. They said, a bot said, nope, I got mass reported. I'm not crying about it. I think it's hilarious that they sought me out and said, you can't be on there anymore. So I canceled my subscription. So I'm not going to pay Elon $8 for a blue check mark when I can't use Twitter to begin with. So, yeah, I found that funny when I was kicked off. Literally, you're permanently suspended. You can watch, you can look, but you can't engage. I'm like, okay, you don't need my money. And
he might need it. Yeah. He might need it. I'm meeting him tomorrow, or his top legal representative tomorrow in Dublin. So he might need your subscription, but I'm going to raise, of course, the ongoing suppression, censorship, algorithmic strangling, and all the other tactics that are still being used on Twitter, on X, when he said he was bringing it back to being the public square. He said that he was ending censorship. He said he was ending collaboration with state agencies. And he has not. Of course, the Elon Musk iteration of Twitter is better than the previous one. The CIA were practically openly running Twitter before he bought it. Of course, it's better than it was, but it is a very long way short of what he promised it would be. And you're right to highlight that. I myself found myself today victim to a tactic I literally had never seen before. One of my friends, Uncle Hoz, put out a clip of me talking about this Motorola business. It was an enormous hit. It was almost 300,000 views in a matter of hours. And then it got a stamp put on it, a stamp which I have never seen before, by Twitter. And the stamp said, this material is taken out of context. What does that mean? Every tweet on Twitter is, the minute it is put up, it is superseded by events. As it happens, this particular tweet remains entirely valid and accurate. But if I tweet now that Arsenal drew 1-1 with Manchester City, and Manchester City score, as I'm glad they did, in the last moments, and it's 2-1 Arsenal, my tweet is immediately out of date. So do you then put a stamp on it that it is taken out of context? It is something I had never seen before, and I intend to raise it tomorrow in Dublin with the senior counsel of X, of Twitter. Now, the Motorola situation has become more complicated. I, in a way, absolved Motorola, but said they would never work again because I thought that the manufacture had been done in Hungary. There it is there, look, there's that tweet in question. Ever seen that before? This material is taken out of context? What? Out of context? The Motorola may not have manufactured the pagers and other car radios, mobile phones, all the other things that blew up, solar panels. It may have been done elsewhere than Taiwan. I don't have a particular down on Taiwan. They're Chinese people. I love them as I love the Chinese people. I want them to come home. But they said that it had been done in Hungary, but it turned out that it was not done in Hungary. That Hungary was only a shell company to pay the check drawn on a Middle East bank. We still don't know which country. It then turned out that the material may have been manufactured, the explosives put in their devices, not in Hungary, but in Bulgaria. Bulgaria are now casting doubt on that, and focus is switching back to Motorola in Taiwan. If I were right now picking the likeliest culprit, it would be in Taiwan, not in Hungary or in Bulgaria. But the story isn't fully understood yet, but it will be. Some of the best brains on the planet are working out what happened. Who manufactured these devices? Who packed them with 20 grams of high explosive? Who detonated them simultaneously in shops, in hospitals, in schools, in taxis? Who detonated the car radios? Who detonated the solar paneling? These questions are all still unresolved, and they will be resolved, but not until after this war now raging in the Levant, because on that turns whether this becomes a truly global conflict. And it might. The United States, the United Kingdom, NATO have warships, warplanes, special forces, undercover advisors, and so on, present on the battlefield on Israel's side. If Iran answers tonight, and that answer is as big and as unexpected as we're told it's going to be, what are these Western airplanes, aircraft carriers, and all the rest going to do then? If they decide that they're going to join in the war openly and fully on the side of Netanyahu for the defense of genocide, then we very well could be into World War III. Last call of this hour, Sylvie in Melbourne, Australia, where she's gotten up very early. Sylvie, good morning to you, and thanks for the call.
Hello, George.
Hi.
Thank you for taking my call. Look, it's really about the Greens Party. I think somebody who was well-meaning has given you a bit of a bum steer about the Green Party in Australia. Now, I don't know about other countries, but here we have a very good Green Party, a great opposition. They are very, very pro-Palestine, vociferously so in Parliament. They're anti-war. They're desperately trying to shut down the weapons industry. They're sticking their necks out over Assange. They've been marvellous, particularly a gentleman called David Shoebridge. I think the yardstick about the Green Party is that both major parties in Australia, particularly Jellyman Albanese and his government, are desperate to shut David Shoebridge and the Greens Party up. They're going to do everything in their power to change the voting and make it impossible for the Greens Party to have any power in the next election. So I just wanted to say this to you because there are some reasonably decent people in this country, and the Greens are up there with the best.
Okay, Sylvie, you've advocated for them admirably and sought to correct the record. What I will say is that Anna Baerbock, the bonkers foreign minister of Germany, is the leading Green Party figure in the whole world. She is the only one holding that kind of power in a frontline government, which is right in the front line of the war in Ukraine and the war genocide against the Palestinian people. Quite apart from my opposition to the whole nostrum of greenery, their foreign policy role in my lifetime, in Australia, in Ireland, and in Germany, and it would be no different here in Britain, has been that they are treacherous phonies. Now, if you say that the current iteration of the Green Party and Mr. Shoebridge is a good egg, because I love you, I'll believe you. But that doesn't take away from the fact that the Green Party in other countries are veritable war criminals. Thanks very much, Syl, for getting up so early to make that call. I can't read. The writing is very small on my screen. I think it's Mohawk. says the Greens are just latte liberals, wealthy middle class housewives, the women are no better, who went into politics because they had too much time on their hands. They are an insufferably, utterly middle class latte brigade, that is for sure. MK says if the Greens had stood down against Storm Shadow Starmer, Andrew Feinstein would be MP in Holborn now, and Sir Keith would be wandering the streets of St Pancras. If that's true, I'm not sure that it is, if that's true, it's an even more powerful argument than the Leanne Mohammed, Dilford South, and the little runt Wes Streeting that I gave earlier. Now, you'll remember that Richard Medhurst couldn't make it to join us on Wednesday. God willing, he's joining us right after this break, and you do not want to miss Richard Medhurst. Coming up in a minute or so. Stay tuned.
There's a group of people in Twitter who are daily posting discussions about Gaza, Lebanon, what's happening, news updates, aid for Gaza, and trying to enlist the help of Jordan and France and any other regional entity that will help get more aid into Gaza and all of Gaza, all of Palestine, for everyone who suffers. So I want to request that everyone who is listening to this go to your local council meetings and peacefully request that their representatives at the local levels do this, because it works.
Thanks for the call, Pia, in Uruguay. I'm a free man of the city of San Francisco, awarded to me for my work on Palestine, on the steps of City Hall itself. So it was a particular delight for me that the San Francisco Council voted by 8 votes to 3 to demand a ceasefire. And that decision didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of campaigning to force the local authority representatives to vote.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
$40,199 have voted in the poll, and there's still 45 minutes to go. Is the Israeli pager attack an act of terrorism, yes or no? You can still vote on Telegram, on my X, on my Twitter, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. And you can still call us on the United States number, toll free, +1 844 944 3344. If it's Britain and Ireland, you can call us on 08081 965522, and that is free of charge. And the rest of the world is 0044 203 966 2625. Richard Medhurst is the renowned independent journalist and political analyst. So much so, they took him off a plane at London Airport in handcuffs. But he hasn't allowed that to terrorize him into silence. And heaven knows what he thinks about what's going on right now in the Levant. We'll soon find out. It's Richard Medhurst on the mother of all talk shows. Richard, so glad to see you safe and sound. I know that it was severe flooding where you were. That meant the telephone lines were all down and you couldn't join us on Wednesday. Nothing more serious than that. So let's go on to the much more serious matter of what's happening in Lebanon right now, and in retaliation from the Lebanese resistance, and what's likely to be in the air pretty damn shortly from Iran. How do you see this whole situation playing out?
Hi, George. Thanks for having me, and sorry I couldn't make it last time. I think what the Israelis have done with the pager attack is, I mean, it really shows that there's no low they won't stoop to, because I mean, you spoke at this at length at the start of the show tonight, how, you know, they took out people's eyes, they maimed them. I mean, people are going to have to undergo operations for the rest of their lives. So, you know, there's no military value in all this. I mean, the Israelis, if they really wanted to maximize, and I'm talking from a strategic point of view, what they did, they would have, and if we believe their claim that these devices really did belong to Hezbollah members, they would have detonated them during a battle or during a war. But they didn't do that. They didn't choose to use this in a truly military way and, you know, disrupt the communications network. They knew that civilians are carrying these things. They knew that civilians are going to be, you know, standing next to the devices when they explode. They knew that they're going to hit doctors. They're going to hit, you know, just random people in the street, and they chose to blow them up anyway at that point. So, you know, it's like they're trying any possible kind of method in order to provoke some form of, you know, regional war, if we're not already in a regional war. And, you know, because I'm legally not at liberty to talk about, you know, what the other side is going to do. I'll just, you know, again, underscore the fact that the Israelis have set a dangerous precedent now. And this means that, you know, what's going to happen next? Are we going to have pagers or walkie-talkies exploding randomly, you know, on an aircraft, for example? And again, I should remind people that there were two attacks. It wasn't just one attack. They did you know, they tried to kill thousands of people first, and then there was another one with walkie-talkies. So, you know, they're setting a very dangerous precedent. And I think other countries are looking at this and going, well, no one said anything. Why don't we use it as well? We can use it maybe locally in our country, but we can use it internationally. We can use it aboard a ship or a plane. This is it's such an Israeli thing to do. And I'm really worried about what's gonna happen afterwards. I don't think there's gonna be anything similar in response, but it's just it's like when they attacked the Iranian consulate in Damascus. Just a week afterwards, you had Mexico invading. The Mexican embassy being invaded by the police in Ecuador because no one said anything. No one cared about that Vienna Convention violation. So these precedents that they're setting, they do damage the standing of security around the world. That's a fact.
Can I just confirm something with you? You're welcome to answer just yes or just no. Did I really understand you to say, as a renowned British journalist and political analyst, you are not legally at liberty to comment on what might be happening right now and later tonight? Is that where we are?
Yes. Yeah, I might get in trouble. They might charge me. So.
Well, that in itself is a very eloquent answer. And forgive me if I pressed you inappropriately on that.
No,
let's talk about the situation that we now have. Jaffa, Haifa, the Holy Land of Nazareth are ablaze. The centers of Christendom, where you and I have both walked, in Syria and in Lebanon, are in danger of being engulfed. The British and American political classes are cavorting at Taylor Swift concerts and getting fitted out for new pants. The American government has been handed over to the wife of Joe Biden. Kamala Harris is using auto cues for her sighs and oohs and ahs on the Oprah Winfrey show. There's never been a worse time to be a citizen in this Western world of ours, has there?
No, there hasn't, George, because we're really, I mean, we're witnessing a regression here. We're going backwards, essentially. And I don't just mean, Kamala Harris. You really had me laughing at the start of the show with your description of her. It is quite comical. I mean, I don't know who the U.S. president is right now, to be honest. I really don't. Is it Joe Biden's wife or is it Kamala Harris? I don't know. Frankly, I think it says a lot that the United States just keeps functioning without a president, because that's not where the levers of power are. They're in Wall Street. But it is not a good time. I mean, I worry what will happen to the West after Palestine is liberated, because all these fascist measures that they're instituting now, that they're using, for example, in my case or Sarah's case, or just generally this abuse of counterterrorism laws, and also the media kind of abdicating their role and moving away from covering real stories to just either ignoring them or doing propaganda for the state. This is going to have a very bad effect on the West in the long term. It's a true erosion of our intellectual faculties, our mental faculties. I mean, we are all becoming Joe Biden, essentially, because if tomorrow morning Palestine is liberated, how do we just undo all of these things overnight? We can't. It will take decades, if not longer, to undo the damage that supporting Israel and supporting Zionism and all this imperialism has done. I really, truly believe that. So, every day that we don't do something is just another decade added to how long we're going to need to undo this. So yes, there hasn't been a worse time. And honestly, when I think of all the countries that I used to go to right now, I would not go to France, for example. I would not go to Germany. I would not. I have to look at a map now and think, can I travel there or not? So yeah, there's never been a worse time for the West, I would say.
Well, just today, at the very moment when two of the top royals from Qatar were visiting Donald Trump in Mar-a-Lago, including one of them, the Prime Minister of Qatar, Israeli stormtroopers were crashing into the Al Jazeera headquarters in Ramallah, ripping down the photograph of Shireen Abu Akleh, an American Christian Palestinian, journalist, murdered by Israel. They ripped down her photograph from the wall and handed a friend of mine, actually, who's the head of the bureau, a 45-day banning order, closing the studio, closing the operation. Al Jazeera is now closed on the West Bank. They're still in Gaza because they're at large in Gaza, but the base in Ramallah has been closed down, despite the rulers sitting with Donald Trump in Mar-a-Lago. This is the impunity with which Israel operates, isn't it? Because the fate is, we've come to this, not one Western journalist or broadcaster will even report, let alone denounce, the treatment of the Al Jazeera staff in Ramallah today. Am I right?
You are, George. You are absolutely right, and I think it's so disgusting. Like, even in death, they keep insulting Shireen. I mean, you remember when they were, her funeral procession was taking place. They assaulted the pallbearers, and yeah, I mean, it almost dropped her coffin. I mean, you can't make this up. You really couldn't make this up. It's like they've become a kind of like a cartoonishly evil rendition of themselves. They really are evil in their behavior, and so much for the world's so much for the Middle East's only democracy. Going
and the world's most moral army.
The world's most moral army. There we go. I'm sorry, I got my slogans crossed. Yeah, it's incredible. So much for that. They've gone in and smashed up Al Jazeera. I mean, I saw the images. I thought, this must be AI or something. It looked like something from a comic book. It was so, perfectly evil. And I think it's quite telling, as you mentioned, these Qatari officials going over to the US, couldn't care less. I mean, it's quite a betrayal of the work that people do at Al Jazeera and of their own. I feel like they they don't really care that much when it comes down to it. I hope I'm wrong, obviously, but I like to think there must be some people in the government there that really do take offense to this. But these kingdoms that we have in the these Arab kingdoms that we have, they're mostly serving U.S. interests. So when it comes to Al Jazeera, if Al Jazeera it does too much honest reporting, well, they'll just allow this to happen, and there won't be any consequences. They won't push back at all. And I'll remind people just one thing, that Israel invaded another country essentially, right? Because this is considered Palestinian territory. So they literally invaded it and then went in and smashed up the offices, which people seem to forget a lot, because they say that. Israel was invaded on October 7, but when Israel is raiding Jenin or raiding Nablus or raiding Ramallah, no one sees that as an invasion or a violation of Palestine's borders. And I think that's very telling about their mentality and how much sovereignty and respect they have for the Palestinians.
Well, I certainly don't carry any torch for Qatar. I've not been on Al Jazeera since the war in Syria began, and I used to be on it practically every day, so I carry no flags for them, but they definitely are better than the other kingdoms in the area. I spoke to a comrade of mine today who was in both Qatar and Dubai over the last few weeks, and the difference in the showcasing, highlighting of the Palestinian and Gaza cause in Qatar was infinitely higher than it is allowed to be in the UAE. So there are gradations even amongst these false kingdoms. But finally, Richard, the situation now is that notwithstanding the Qatari visit to Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump has gone completely berserk for Israel. Mrs. Adelson, the widow of Sheldon Adelson, the Las Vegas casino magnate, has given $100 million. That's a lot of money. Even by American standards, that's 10% of $1 billion election budget. Unlike the people giving clothes to Angela Rayner and Keir Starmer, she definitely wants something in return. And the something she wants in return is a guarantee that Trump will be a slave to Netanyahu if he becomes president after the election in November. Harris and Biden, do we even have to discuss them? Has there ever been a time when both political parties are in a Dutch auction, vying with each other as to who can be the most obeisant to a foreign power of 7 million people on the other side of the world? It's almost impossible to understand this.
It's quite disgusting. It really is, George. I still don't understand, and I'm speaking just generally now about the West, why our politicians are so hell-bent on bending over backwards to serve, again, a foreign power, a foreign interest, a colonial outpost. Well, I suppose I answered my own question when I said colonial outpost, but it really is quite disgusting, and I think people forget that Donald Trump did more for Israel than a lot of the presidents, maybe all of them before him.
All of them.
None of them dared move the embassy to Jerusalem, and he just went ahead and did it. And that by itself is a scandal. And then you had several Security Council resolutions saying Israel's annexation of the West Bank, of Jerusalem, of the Golan Heights in Syria are null and void. Those are the exact terms, null and void. They're illegal. They're not allowed under international law. And even the United States, when these resolutions were passed, either abstained or voted in favor of them. They were passed almost unanimously, 242, 497. So he broke with long-standing United States foreign policy that, this Golan Heights are Syrian. And in exchange, they named a settlement. They built a settlement called Trump Heights after him. I mean, it's so tacky, honestly. I really can't explain it. So, he did all of these things. And then, of course, he killed Soleimani, and he even admits himself that the Israelis wanted this and pushed him to do it. So, I mean, whether he did it without knowing or he did it willingly, I mean, what difference does it make? He's still serving Israeli interests. So I'm not surprised that we're back in this situation. I mean, I was saying the same thing, and I'm sure you were as well 4 years ago, that both of them are so Zionist, you can't tell them apart. So, when people say that Trump will be better for Palestinians, I really don't know what the hell they're talking about. It's really a toss-up here. We don't know what's going to happen. I think the genocide will just continue as normal. He might do some even crazier things. I mean, because if you're ready to break with U.S. policy, long-standing U.S. policy like that, you obviously don't care for conventions or norms. And I think it's quite telling that Joe Biden kept those things in place. He didn't come in and say, well, I'm moving the embassy back, or I'm unrecognizing the Syrian Golan Heights as Israeli. So Trump did a lot of favors, right? He doesn't get any of the heat or the attention, and gets to keep appeasing the Israelis, and now, of course, supporting them with the genocide. And this pager attack, I mean, sorry to go back, but I think we really should. The way the Americans have been addressing this, acting as if they didn't know, or it's not a big deal. It's really astonishing. I mean, this is like a 9/11 for the Lebanese, and no one seems to see it that way except us. Or well, when I say us, I mean most of the world. But we really are in a toss-up here. Whether Trump wins or Joe Biden wins, at the end of the day, Israel is really the one that is victorious.
Lastly, and again, be circumspect as you need. How long is this sword of Damocles going to hang over you? How can it be justified to have one of the world's top journalists unable to discuss certain things? Don't they have to miturate or get off the pot? Don't they have to charge you or free you? How can you keep a journalist in limbo like this?
I don't know, George, how they can justify it, but I have to go back to the police station in November, and then I'll find out if they're dropping it, if they're extending the investigation for another 3 months and putting me in limbo again, or if they're going to charge me. Basically in November I'll find out, but they could charge me at any moment if they want. They could charge me, tomorrow, God forbid. So. It's quite frustrating, to say the least, and it's like a win-win for them, I suppose, because if they keep me under investigation, I can't really speak or report freely, and if they charge me, then I also can't speak or report freely. So yeah, it's very frustrating. I mean, I'm not naive. I didn't think that this couldn't happen in the UK, that we have like such fascist measures. I knew what the Terrorism Act is, but this Section 12 is really something else. I mean, I still, when they took me in, when they nicked me, I didn't even understand that what it was. I thought I was being Schedule 7'd. So it's quite new for me, and I hope that I can get back to my work as normal. And I'm very grateful for your support. It really means a lot to me, and thank you for bringing attention to my case. It's quite. Thank you.
We will never leave you alone, Richard Medhurst. You are one of our brightest stars. Thanks for joining us on the Mother of All Talk Shows. Let's take a quick break. Then it's your calls all the way to Gayatri and the social media roundup. You don't want to miss that, do you? Stay tuned. As the green smoke rose, their faces flashed out, pallid green, and faded again as it vanished. Then slowly the hissing passed into a humming, into a long, loud, droning noise. Suddenly, a humped shape rose out of the pit, and the ghost of a beam of light seemed to flicker out after it. Forthwith, flashes of actual flame, a bright glare leaping from one to another, sprang from the scattered group of men. It was as if some invisible jet impinged upon them and flashed into white flame. It was as if each man were suddenly and momentarily turned to fire. Now you get that, War of the Worlds, narrated by me. You get the killings of Tony Blair. You get Killing Kelly, 2 of my films. You get that absolutely free on patreon.com/George Galloway. And in the coming week, finally, we will be releasing a short history of Yasser Arafat, written and spoken by me. So, all it's going to cost you is the price of a cup of tea per week. I think I'm worth that. I hope you do. Strange that you're watching if you don't. And it's not for me. My clothes are second-hand, pre-loved, in second-hand shops, and I buy them myself. This is not for me. This is to keep the mother of all talk shows running. So please, at the end of this show, sign up for the price of a cup of tea per week on patreon.com/George Galloway. Nick is in Los Angeles, but wants to talk about Israel and Iran. I told you this is the global university of the airwaves. Nick, welcome.
Greetings, George. Longtime supporter of your show.
Thank you, sir.
I had a quick question. Yes, I had a quick question regarding the Iranian response. Given that the genocide in Gaza is going on already for about a year coming up, what's it going to take for Iran to, not prolong their response any longer? Because as of right now, this delayed response, it looks like it's working against their favor. So I wanted to know,
I agree. I said on Wednesday that Iran must speak or forever hold its peace. You can't go on indicating that, the engines are turning, the propellers are whirling, the moves, the positions, the people and material are being put in place for a big response to an egregious terrorist attack in your country, in your capital, of an esteemed and important guest. You can't go on saying you will not allow your ambassadors to be killed, your ambassadors to be wounded. The Iranian ambassador in Beirut was wounded in the pager terror attack. You can't go on saying that you will never abandon Palestine. You can't go on saying to your co-religionists in Lebanon that you have their back while they are now being slaughtered, and you actually do nothing. Now, to be fair to Iran, they did make, it was mainly for show, but it also had a deadly tail end when they attacked in an aerial bombardment of Israel just a few months ago. So it's not true that they've done nothing. Iran has been the only Muslim country, only one, to be supplying both the Lebanese resistance, the Yemeni resistance, the Iraqi resistance, and above all the Palestinian resistance in Gaza with the means to defend themselves against the relentless attack of the empire. Without Iran, these people would have pea shooters or firing crossbows. So that's not doing nothing. Iran has done a lot. But if they don't respond to what's happening now, and I think they're going to, then their credibility will be very severely reduced indeed in the global south and amongst those who look to them. And many, many millions of people do. So I don't think they will delay it any longer. The IRGC commander said that the response from Iran is going to be far greater and far more, I think the word he used was complex, than anyone is expecting. And I'm expecting it tonight. But we'll see about that. We'll review it on Wednesday on the Mother of All Talk Shows. Harris is in Birmingham, England, I assume, but maybe Alabama. Who knows? We'll soon know. Harris, welcome to the show.
Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Galloway, and
Alaikum
congratulations on your victory in the Rochdale election. I'm speaking from Birmingham, West Midlands, UK, and I called you in December when I informed you that I lost my family in Gaza and things like that. But Mr. Galloway, I mean, I just want to say I love you, and I wanted to know, where is the Nawara Media Studios in London? Because I love Nawara Media, and I just wanted to meet Ash Sarkar, Aaron Bastani, and Michael Walker.
Well, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know where their studio is. They are enemies of mine. It's odd that you love me and you also love them. Maybe one of those statements that you made isn't accurate, but if it's accurate, it's very odd. Novara Media are enemies of mine. I don't know where their studio is, and if I did, I wouldn't announce it on air in any case. I doubt if they are very hard to find. They don't have many people who love them. So if you are their lover in Birmingham, West Midlands, I suspect they'll be very glad to hear from you. Is the Israel pager attack an act of terrorism? 41,687 people have now voted. And it's overwhelming. 98, 89, 91, 95% of the people who voted think that it was indeed an act of terrorism. Akila McCann says, when Israel attacked Lebanon in 2006, they cut the communication centers before they went for the worst attacks. They are doing it again. And Jack Klugman, great name, says the stolen Golan is where Israel gets 30% of its water. Gold in a desert is why they want southern Lebanon water, always stealing. And Federico Mazandrani says Iran is populated by 30% working class and 70% petty bourgeois. That sounds a bit unlikely to me. The traitorous middle class which will never sacrifice a jot to defend Iran against her external enemies. A country with a 70% bourgeoisie is a very peculiar country, and you left out all the people who are rural farm workers, of whom there are millions. Donna in Panama wants to talk about Richard Medhurst's interview, which was salutary, Donna, both in what he said and what he was unable to say. Don't you think?
Yes, and I totally understand, because shortly after the retaliation for October 7th began, I was on Facebook communicating with a man who, like me, was a former professional ballet dancer and not a very political person. And I was doing my best to educate him about Israel-Palestine. And I simply wrote he said, well, if I were a Palestinian, I think I would just surrender or leave, because, who can compete with the fourth largest army in the world? And I said, well, they do have allies, Hezbollah, for example. Well, the censors, Mark Zuckerberg's censors, went wild, and they actually made me take that sentence off, where I simply stated a fact. And I'm not a famous journalist. I'm not even, probably, I can't imagine I'm on anyone's radar all that much. And I also had a review, which I have no idea. It was on TripAdvisor. They took a review of mine down that it was a 5-star review of a hotel, of all things, that the manager absolutely loved. And I just saw it today, TripAdvisor. We took your review is hidden because it doesn't meet community standards. I didn't mention anything political at all. So I am getting very, very concerned about censorship as well.
What a story, my goodness. Well, you'll always be on our radar, Donna, particularly now that we know you were a ballet dancer. My daughter, Orla, is ballet dancer of the week in her school, and I'm a big admirer of that art form, both in the Bolshoi, allowed to say Bolshoi now in Western media, allowed to admit that you love Moscow, that you love Russia. But I was also a close friend of the prima ballerina in Cuba, Dame Alicia Alonso, a truly majestic and magnificent ballerina. Donna, you'll always be welcome here on the Mother of All Talk Shows. Zoran is in Sweden on election interference. Go ahead, Zoran.
Yes, George. Hello, George. I follow you, and you are an exceptional person. I admire all what you do, what you talk, all your show. I follow whenever I have a time to follow you. I have one question. You know, the English is one of the languages which I speak. I speak Swedish, Russian, Serbian, English, a little bit of English. It's not the best, but I think it's good enough.
Good enough, very good enough.
Interference in the election process. That's what I heard many times from Western, especially American media. But if you can qualify everyone who ran for the office or everyone who vote like interference in the election process.
Exactly.
It's stupid, you know. This whole construction is stupid. You can, like, if you believe in democracy, you know, somebody come in the main square in the town in the old Greekland and speak. He interfering in the election process. He's interfering
in the election, yeah. I suppose they would say they're talking about foreign interference, but the truth is twofold. First of all, we interfere in the elections of most countries on the planet. In fact, we have frequently overthrown and murdered the people who were elected. We overthrew Mossadegh in Iran. If we hadn't done that and reinstated the Shah, we would never have had, perhaps, the Ayatollah Khomeini. We would never have had the Iranian Revolution. We overthrew the elected prime minister. And when I say we, I don't even mean just we, the West. I mean we, the British, in the van. We caused the murder of Patrice Lumumba, the first elected leader of Congo. If we had not done that, we would not have had well over half a century of murder and rape and robbery of the people of the Congo. We overthrew Kwame Nkrumah, the father of African nationalism. We overthrew and caused the death of Salvador Allende, the president of Chile, the elected president of Chile. Arbenz in Guatemala. I could go on. We don't give a damn about interfering in other people's elections. And if the wrong guy gets elected, we're quite happy to kill them, if not overthrow them and send them into exile. We interfere in Russian elections every time there is a Russian election. Now, we will not countenance Russian or Chinese interference in our elections. What do they mean by interference? They mean some guy tweeting pro-Chinese propaganda or anti-Keir Starmer propaganda. What do they mean by election interference? It's an alibi. Clinton lost an election that nobody else in the country could have lost. And Trump would never have beaten any other candidate other than Hillary Clinton. She's not going to admit that. She's not going to say that the people in America hate me because I'm a corrupt old witch. She's not going to say that I got punished for not campaigning in Rust Belt states She's not going to say I got punished because my policies were lousy, my performance in advocating for them even lousier. She's not going to say the people hate the Clintons because they're the most corrupt couple ever to benight the American political scene. She's not going to admit these things. So she has to find a scapegoat. The scapegoat was Russia. Russiagate completely overshadowed, you could say, disfigured the presidential term of Donald Trump. He couldn't get out from under it because the deep state and the mass media were determined to pin the false lies about Russia and the 2016 election. They never let it go. And they're trying to do it again now. They're arresting people now for interfering in the American elections. Stirring up, one of them I saw, stirring up the feelings of black people in America about racial injustice. Like any black person in America needs a guy with snow on his boots, a vodka bottle in his hip pocket, to come with a fur hat all the way from Russia to tell them about racial injustice in America, where strange fruit twisted on the southern trees 100 years ago, 50 years ago, that didn't allow them to pee in the same pot as a white person, that still disproportionately levels state violence against them, sends a massively disproportionate number of them into the prison system. There's a small nation of black prisoners in the United States prison system. Do you think you need a Russian to tell their families about these injustices? Do you think the family of Malcolm X, of Martin Luther King, need a Russian to tell them what happened to their husband, their father? I mean, really, when you think about it, Zoran, it is the most puerile excuse any politician could possibly adduce for their defeat that Johnny Foreigner somewhere made a Facebook post which influenced my defeat in the election. Andrew is in America, in San Diego, but wants to talk about Israel. Andrew, welcome.
Hi, thank you, Sir George Galloway.
Welcome.
I have 2 points I wanted to make. Speaking of election interference, we have an organization here called AIPAC. It's the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. Yes, that was. They have spent more than $100 million on U.S. federal elections just in this election cycle. Yeah. And that is, their goal is to support pro-Israel policies. Mm-hmm. And I think that is election interference, because
Sure.
that ties in with my second point, which is our out-of-control military budget. This year, Congress has appropriated $953 billion. Now, not only is that an obscenely high number, considering the state of America, where people can barely buy food, buy gas, they have to make a choice of, do I get to drive to work, collect a paycheck, and then not be able to feed my family? Or do I, it's an impossible situation, and our housing costs are also out of control because an organization called BlackRock, Vanguard State Street, they are buying up single-family homes in America. Yep. So we have that problem. But back to the defense budget, the senators sitting in Congress are allowed to buy stock in defense companies. And that's an obvious conflict of interest, because their self-enrichment is at the cost of millions of lives, because they're giving billions of taxpayer money to the Pentagon to keep this war machine going. And these 5 big contractors, that's Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, Who else is there? General Dynamics, Boeing. They get most of the money. Yep, about 140 billion a year. This must also stop. And until AIPAC is brought under control, or maybe just disbanded, and this obscene military budget brought under control, and these congressmen stop from buying stocks, that's insider trading, America is going to have a hard time recovering from the mess that it's dug itself into.
Yeah, I'm sorry to say that's true. Thanks for that wonderful call, Andrew, in San Diego. It is incredible that the American Israel Public Affairs Committee does not even have to register under the FARA Act as the servant of a foreign power, like you would do if you were an official of the Britain-America Committee in America. You would have to register because you're clearly working for the interests of a foreign power, in that case, Britain. But you don't have to register under FARA for AIPAC, which boasts that it spends $100 million in this election cycle. And it's not even yet October. And boasts that every candidate that it endorsed was successful in the primary elections. That's $100 million from AIPAC, $100 million to Trump from Adelson. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry, every Jose, Juan, and Nkomo in the U.S. Congress is on the payroll of AIPAC. Everyone, people you've never heard of, are receiving $500,000, $600,000 from AIPAC. How's that for election interference? How's that for corruption? How's that for the debasement of any kind of definition of democracy? I really don't know how the American people can put up with it. Andrew, thank you again. Now, I have another show other than the mother of all talk shows. It's called Have It Out with Galloway. Here's a taste. If you want to join me on Have It Out with Galloway, you can be the audience member on that video wall so that I can see as well as hear you. Come and have it out with Galloway. Come and have a go if you think you're hard enough. www.haveitoutwithgalloway.com.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Check it out, Have It Out with Galloway. You'll enjoy it. It goes out on Tuesdays at 7 o'clock. If you want to be in it, then you need to be ready for a pre-record in the late afternoon UK time on Mondays. So if you want to be on the video wall, it's Monday, early evening, late afternoon. If you want to watch the show, it's available on my platforms at 7 p.m. on Tuesday evenings. Mars says, if Muslims had done the pager attacks, it would have been an act of terror. But when the West and its illegitimate children do it, it's kosher. Paul Meany says, GG, how much longer do American and British citizens have to endure the war criminal ghouls, Biden and Starmergeddon's support for the war criminal Netanyahu's genocide? Henna Qureshi says, why is there an Israeli military HQ 450 meters from the Ichilov Hospital on Weizmann Street 6 in Tel Aviv? Why are Israeli military sites near Jewish homes and schools? Do you want the Ichilov Hospital destroyed? And Brad Briggs says, I still get ads on YouTube inviting me to travel to Israel for tourism. However, the IDF is bombing every place associated with Christ that I would like to visit. You're absolutely correct. My wife's in the room. Gayatri, what's rattling?
Well, about about that travel ad, funny enough, did the Foreign Office not give out a warning that you should avoid all travel to Israel unless it's necessary?
Yeah, unless it's necessary. Unless you're one of the secret British soldiers that are operating there. Unless you're one of the MI6 officers that are doing their best to help them there. Unless you're one of the arms magnates that's selling them weapons there. Unless you're a Labour politician who, no matter what they do, is a friend of theirs.
Friend of Israel, indeed. So, is the Israeli pager attack an act of terror? Is the Pope a Catholic? Olufemi Okini says, setting...
You better watch that chain isn't banging on the microphone.
Oh yeah.
Sorry to
shall I throw it to the back?
interrupt you, yeah.
There you go. Let's not interfere, have any interference, right? Setting pages and walkie-talkies off to blow up with no awareness of where the targets may be is a terrorist act. The target could be in an airport, as you mentioned, aboard a plane, around inflammable materials, hospitals, schools. They didn't care. We know that Israel and the IDF have no regard of other people's lives. For too long, the world has tolerated their indiscriminate actions. It is time to put a stop to
As
these.
the man said, if Muslims had done that operation, as well they might, and I'll predict they probably will, one of these Muslim terror groups will undoubtedly adopt this tactic. All you have to do is buy up a few thousand pagers, mobiles, whatever, buy them, and then fill them with explosive and then sell them onto the market.
But then it will be a terrorist attack.
Then that will be a terrorist attack.
Yusuf Ramadan says Israel is looking for an excuse to pull Iran into the war, so they will poke away. But I think Iran is smarter and will not entertain this.
Yeah, but what does that mean? I mean, do you want to establish deterrence to deter Israel from its most extreme, most egregious acts against you? Or are you going to keep saying, well, you're trying to tempt me into this war, so I'm not going to go into it. Meanwhile, I'll let people who speak for me or advocate for me say that the response is coming, the retaliation is coming over and over again, weeks, months after the event. That's not establishing deterrence. It's not establishing balance or equilibrium. I don't want a wider Middle East war. I want the war to stop immediately.
Yeah.
But at the moment, it's a one-way war.
Yeah, it has been. Your monologue was very powerful and has been very popular. Lots of people have commented on this. George, watching your monologue this evening stirred me in the same feeling as watching Freddie Mercury strut his stuff at the height of his powers.
I have never been compared to Freddie Mercury before. There are some key differences between me and Freddie, but he was quite a turn. That's true.
I have to say, though, that just because the UK Green Party is dominated by the privileged white middle class, it doesn't mean that climate change and global warming aren't the single biggest global existential threat.
I don't believe that they are. There's climate change, of course. There's always climate change. There's grotesque levels of pollution in British society, in all societies, actually. From plastics to other pollutants, poisons in our water, in our food table, in ourselves. The need to clean our environment and keep it clean is an aim not only do I support, I always have advocated for.
Yeah.
But if you tell me that the world is going to end in an environmental Armageddon by 2030, 2050, 2070, whatever the current target is for that, I simply don't believe you. And I don't believe in apocalyptic prediction to drive people like sheep into self-harm, because that's what we are doing. If you force the working class people in Britain and in other countries into poverty, penury, unemployment, cold, you are not actually doing anything for the environment, but you are enriching the people who are behind the green capitalist mean machine. So I don't accept these apocalyptic predictions by the Green lobby, but that doesn't mean the Green Party have any answers on anything. The Green Party has no answers on the economy, no answers on foreign affairs, no answer to war. How green can you be supporting NATO?
Exactly.
Which the British Green Party does.
Exactly, because what they do is they're aiming to punish the people, the working class in particular, with their silly policies like ULEZ and or other. This last week, households in England will be punished with a fine of £300 if they still have chimneys up their house that's from the 1990s.
Incredible.
What kind of...
You're going to get fined £300 if your house has got a chimney.
Even though it's not working anymore. But so these kind of things, right? Punishing the people, the workers, rather than aiming at the big targets.
Yeah, it's not the workers that have got private jets. It's not the workers that are driving gas-guzzling 4x4s. It's not the workers that are flying all over the world to summits on climate change and burning up the atmosphere. It's not them that's doing that. It's the rulers and the rich that are doing that. But it is the poor and the workers that will be made to pay. If you are told to scrap your car and get an electric one, for which there's absolutely no infrastructure, you're going to be punished. If you're told to scrap your boiler, we've got a boiler. Imagine if in our house, if we had to get rid of our boiler and replace it with a so-called heat pump, we'd shiver and we'd have to pay thousands of pounds for the privilege. No, I don't buy it. And I'm surprised how many people do buy it. But that doesn't mean I'm in favour of the pollution of the environment or the exploitation of the earth to the point of exhaustion. Of course, I don't. Give me one or two more.
Right, so here, good to see you had Chris Hedges on your show. At last, someone who doesn't support Russia. Your campaign for Gaza, I fully support, but I disagree with everything you say, trying to legitimize Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine.
I don't
FYI, 33 years ago, Ukraine gained legal independence from Russia. Putin's excuse that it's because of the Nazis is nonsense. The Nazi party only polled 1.6% at their last election. So go ahead.
First of all, Chris Hedges' view on the Ukraine is either no different to mine or different only by nuance, as far as I'm aware. But I'll look into it. I believe that the war that was launched on Ukraine in 2014 should never have been launched. But it wasn't launched by Putin. It was launched by us. We launched the war on Ukraine in 2014. We overthrew the how's that for election interference? We overthrew the elected president of Ukraine, sent him dashing to escape the mob that were right on his tail into exile. We burned down the Ukrainian parliament. We put the far right inside the Ukrainian parliament. You say it's 1.6. That's nonsense. Your definition of far right is very different to mine if you think the far right in Ukraine is only 1.6. But my main reason for opposing NATO in Ukraine is the same reason that I would oppose NATO incursion anywhere else on anybody else's border. It's not because I love Russia. I happen to love Russia. But that's accidental in this debate. I'm against NATO enlargement, NATO threats against other people's countries, whether it was Saudi Arabia, China, Kathmandu, or Russia. I'm against it. I'm against it partly because we're having to pay for it, and we have got better things to do with our money.
Much better.
But Russia will never allow, simple fact, Russia will no more allow a foreign military alliance to encamp itself on its borders, a border which, by the way, has been invaded 3 times in the last 200 years. Across that border, 3 tyrants have invaded Russia. They're not going to allow a 4th. So it's a simple matter of practicality. I told you that Russia will not accept this, that Russia will fight this. And if Russia fights it, you will lose. We will lose. We lose our money. We even lost some of our people over there as mercenaries. I just want the war to end, don't you? What's his name, this correspondent?
Andrew?
Andrew. Come and have a go if you think you're hard enough. Call up the show. Don't send me a cowardly email like that, seeking to put a difference between me and Chris Hedges that doesn't exist. Last one, Gayatri.
No. I have a lot, actually, but I think we should give way to our legend before the end of the show.
Are you sure? Well, let's read it over our chips after the show.
Yes.
We'll go through
Good idea.
the social media. Sorry if I let you down there by going on too long. It is indeed the legend, Norma in Bristol, a change of subject, which is sometimes a good idea. Norma, what's on your mind?
Well, hello, George. It's only a comment, but everything on at the moment makes me, I expect everybody else, very angry. And I do like boxing. And I listened to the boxing last night, the World Heavyweight with Joshua Anthony. And basically, I said to myself, why do I like it? The reason is, I think, is because it mentally helps to get rid of the aggression. And I love the buzz of these boxing matches. I just wondered what you thought.
Well, I love boxing. I was a boxer. I was a southpaw. If you want to know what that is, watch Rocky, where Sylvester Stallone explains to Adrian on the ice why being a southpaw is actually quite awkward for your opponents. It means that I lead with my right and punch with my left as opposed to the other way around in most cases. Am I explaining this properly? Adrian, I love boxing. I believe that the professional heavyweight game has gone way downhill, but here's the most significant thing I can say in response to your call. At about 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon, I asked my comrade, Paul Cannon, what the odds were on Dubois knocking out Anthony Joshua.
That's
and
right,
Paul laughed. How he laughed at the idea that Dubois was going to knock out Anthony Joshua, the darling of the establishment. I knew Dubois was going to knock out Joshua, who's become a male model rather than a proper heavyweight boxer. And my friend Paul looked for the odds. He said it's 3-1 nearly for Dubois to beat Joshua. And it'll be much longer odds than that on a knockout. I said to him, go on Dubois for a knockout. And he didn't do it. And if he had done it, he would be, as they say in the West Midlands, considerably richer than he is now. I have unfortunately run out of time, and I've got to take my wife for chips and read the social media that we didn't get through due to my long-windedness, for which I apologize to you, but more especially to her. Happy wife, happy life, as any married man knows. It's been marvelous for me. I hope it was for you. And if it was, come back. First of all, on Tuesday at 7 o'clock to have it out with Galloway, and then on Wednesday at 7 o'clock for the mother of all talk shows. Let's hope we're all still here by then.